Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Mega Man Network Transmission. In the last part we took care of the Legendary World 3 area and fought off Pharaoh Man, and now we have access to the final level of the game. But because this is a 100% run, we're not doing any plot progress this part. In fact, we're also not doing the other thing we unlocked by S-ranking all the net navies. We're not doing that until next time. This part's all about getting a majority of the missing battle chips. I say the majority for a reason. We are at 119 out of 137 chips total, and we also are, I think, missing, like, at this point, at least 2/3 of the program advances. No matter what you do, you can't complete the library without doing that thing that we unlocked by getting an S rank on Pharaoh Man, or by going to the final level, because we get a new battle chip for doing that thing we unlocked. And there are 3 battle chips that you can only get in the final level. So our goal by the end of this video is essentially 133 out of 137 chips. Some of the ones we missed are ones that just didn't drop from enemies that already had them. Like I think right there I got the Hammer battle chip, which we didn't have before from the Hammer Joes here in Gravity Man stage. But the main reason we're over here is for the B-Tank 3s, because we want the Big Bomb battle chip from them. In general, chip grinding in this game isn't too bad as long as you have a highly powered buster or highly powered damaging chips in your folder, because a charge shot, even say like an M cannon, can take out by and large any enemy in the game, barring things like Megalians. So as long as you know where the viruses are, because you've seen most of them pretty quickly in this LP, you can find them no problem. This is probably going to be a lot of back and forth, but it's also, I'd say, the easiest library to complete in the series, because these viruses are all in set locations. It's not like the RPGs, where you have to not only do well in busting rank, you have to have those enemies show up at all. And sometimes there's cases like, I'm immediately thinking of one of the Aura chips in Battle Network 1, where there's no easy way to get that from a battle. You have to get that from a trade. There's no drop-down S, which is annoying in Battle Network 1 and 2. There's no extraordinarily rare things to find. So if anything, if you want to say you completed a Battle Network game, go for this one. Although I will say this game gives you the least for getting 100% out of any of the games, because at least the other games all give you completion stars. In this game, you don't even get that. The only things that you get for getting more chips are the aforementioned little deck holder that shows up on Lance 4, and if you get enough battle chips, as we slowly see throughout this part, I believe, you get a gigantic cardboard box filled with chips, and I don't think there's anything beyond that. A lot of the battle chips we're missing are weirdly enough all found in Shadow Man's level, because not only can you get Spice 2 and 3 here, this is also where all 3 Kunai chips are. This is where Invis 2 and 3 can be gotten via the Spooky 3s. This is where Candle 3 is. You can get a lot of things here, if you're missing the same chips I am. If you're like I believe I am at this point in the LP, and you've already gotten every HP memory, every reg up, every memory up, every power up from shops, use what any you have to, for one thing, get every new battle chip you haven't gotten there from there yet. And then put it all into fast custs, full custs, HP charging subchips just to help your grinds a little bit, and especially MP charges, because that can be a make or break for you getting that S rank on an enemy to get the battle chip you are currently missing. We are going to be doing a fair amount of back and forth between levels in this part, by the way. I do try to show me teleporting into areas so you can figure out exactly which computer I'm in if you can't tell just based off level design, though. The main reason we're going back and forth is the way I'm generally handling this is going through the library top to bottom and then going for the chips I'm missing in numerical order. And sometimes it's easier to get a chip in one area than the one version of the enemy that's in a later or earlier area. For instance, yes, we ran into a lot of the Megalian types in earlier parts of the crawl towards the Zero account, but if you're looking for any of those Aura chips, and even Barrier for that matter, let alone things like Drop Down or some recovery chips, Zero account is easily the best place to get at least all 4 of those core things. This is a lot of experimentation still and trying to figure out what strategies work to kill what enemy, and in that regard I can appreciate the chip system giving you that little bit of nuance to the combat that the RPGs have as well, just in a much lower detail and execution level. I think the only grind I would rather do than this in the series, even as easy as this is probably like Battle Network 6 Japanese release. because Battle.EXE gives you a lot of tools that makes that library fly by pretty quickly, even with its weird issues here and there. Like a story I'll probably share again when we eventually get to Battle.EXE. Battle.EXE is a bit of a virus-raising simulator you can do. When I last played through that game in college, via emulator, that virus-raising simulator may have crashed the game and made me lose like 3-4 hours of save because my save got wiped, so I had to reload an earlier save state that I made just as a, I'm about to end for the night, so I don't want to do a proper save. I'm just going to place one of those there. That was annoying. Next chip we're missing is Mag-Bomb 3 from the Magnoids here in Elecman stage. Nice and easy to get. That was the 0 battle chip. It's pretty good for doing this period. One note that also makes this an easier grind is, for one thing, Zenny doesn't drop nearly as often in network transmission from enemies. You get most of your Zenny from the level design, literally. But also, in the case an enemy has multiple battle chips, like the Spookies that have the invisible little chips, as well as some of the recovery chips, or Metars having any of the Shockwave and up battle chips and guard, the battle chip that is exclusive to that enemy drops much more often than the lower tiered ones, especially at higher ranks. To the point where, in the case, say I'm going for the Dino Waves from Metar 3s, the amount of times I've gotten guards from them more than once in a row is probably counted on one hand. And I usually get just several Dino Waves in a row, for instance. So here in No Gravity Area 2, I need to kill that Yart, or is that a Yort, and get its Yo-Yo 3 battle chip. Notably, the mini-boss, the big Yart, can also drop that. It's just, that's nowhere near as reliable. Already only 9 chips left to go. We've gotten some good progress in already. Next up, we're looking for High Guard, the highest level with the guard battle chip dropped exclusively by the Sniper Joes found here back at the Bank Network. I recommend using the one right here at the end of Computer 1, then teleporting back in and out from 1 to 2, back and forth, to get it, until you eventually find it. Next up, we actually need to head back to the Vacant World 3 network, because the next battle chip we're missing is Candle 3, which is dropped exclusively by Candevil 3s. And you can find them in a couple places, technically, yes, but I think the one here in Vacant Network 1 is the best way to go about it, because it's on a nice flat area, so you can use chips like Gutsman to get pretty easily, Life Swords, some of the later bubbler things like Bubble Spread as well, or you could just use Zero because he's 0 and does 300 damage pretty quickly. There we go, that's Candle 3. Let's see, what's after that? I actually don't remember, because I actually paused in the middle of recording this commentary to edit out another 2 minutes of footage, because I realized I didn't need to scroll down all the way through the library every time on footage. I can cut some stuff out. Alright, next up we're missing the Ice Cube battle chip. This is dropped by the Polar Bear enemies found here in the Waterworks network. It's a pretty common drop. The only reason I didn't get it back when is because my Buster was way too underpowered, as was my chip library. The level that your damage can upgrade in this game is honestly kind of ridiculous if you know which chips to grind for and how easily you can get them using certain strategies like Navichips, which is technically also a thing you can game in the mainline battle networks and Star Force as well. But there's a few more steps and a little more nuanced what goes into busting ranks in order for that to happen, on top of the literal random encounter system once again. So next up, we're going after one of the hardest chips to get in the game. This one's infamous amongst the player base for being just a tedious slog to get, let alone to max. But while we're here, I'm going to finally get that last HP memory from Numberman, and I might as well use whatever Zenny I have left to just get some more battle chips. I recommend Silver Fist, especially, considering Gold Fist is a much harder chip to max, because I don't think there's enough gold chips found in blue or purple mystery data to literally max that chip's uses out. I think you do need to use the Cyber Slot Machine back in Color Man stage to do that from memory. And I don't like relying on gambling, so Silver Fist is good enough, even though I think I ultimately put Gold Fist in my folder anyway because its damage is just that much better. So the next chip is dropped exclusively by the other variant of the Mole or Rush virus that appears here at the end of Legendary World 3 Area 1. If you go up there and it doesn't spawn in, just go back to Legendary World 3 Area 2 and then come back to Area 1 and try again. It'll show up eventually. It's just a random chance on which one spawns. But even then, if you see a Mole 1, kill it for extra recovery 300s. So this is the most annoying virus in the game. This is a Mole 2. Whereas Mole 1 was 10 shots of Whack-A-Mole in a row, Mole 2 takes this and multiplies it by 20. You need to hit this thing 200 times in a row in order to get its battle chip. And it is a pretty good battle chip. It gives you the pop-up battle chip, which is the best version of Invis in the game. But this takes 4 to 5 minutes on its own, and if you miss once, you have to start from the beginning all over again. Admittedly though, the timing on Mole 1 and 2 in this game are a lot more lenient than the mainline games, where every successive shot, the moles would speed up. They stay the same speed here, and you can hit the mole anytime it's just not above the ground. So if you miss a shot even, you have a chance to maybe get a second or third shot in to hit them. It's a lot less reaction-based than the other ones were. It's still tedious to do though. I can recommend maxing out pop-up if you're patient. I would say at most, if you really want it, go for like 2 or 3 uses at most. Don't go for the total max of 5. It's not worth it. But it is a very good battle chip. But again, pop-up is good. Drop-down's fine. If you want a good Invis chip, just go with drop-down back in the 0 count. It's still very good. So the next is the last battle chip we can get in this active grind, because numbers 118 through 120 are the ones found in the final level, and the final battle chip in the library is the one gotten through doing that other thing that requires all the Navis to be beaten with an S rank. Elec Aura is all that remains, and that's here in the 0 count. Pretty easy to find too, because he's just down at the end, so let's just cut over there and do a good thing to kill it. Tree Bomb 3 is very good at this, so is Needleman after the fact. But if you hit a good shot, you can take out the Aura and the Megalian all at once. There we go. We now have every battle chip we can get in the game without either going into the optional boss fights or into the final level. We're not calling it here though, we still have about 5 minutes left in this video, and you might be wondering why. The fun thing about how the battle chips are laid out, you only need these 133 to do any of the 14 program advances in the game. And we've already done a couple of those, so we only have maybe I think like 10 left to do. So we're going to spend the rest of this video just showcasing those program advances, what chips they need, and how they work, in the case you want them for any of your boss strategies. You don't get anything for doing all the program advances similarly to the library. The main reason I'm doing them all is because this game actually has a program advance memo you can fill out compared to even any of the versions of Battle Network 1 where that didn't exist. And here's how I'm going to be doing them. I'm jacking into Den Area 1, using up all the battle chips I have that aren't tied to program advances, and then just grinding and waiting until a full set of the ones I do want shows up. This is tedious. I think I was here for 20 minutes on its own just trying to get all these done between 2 different folder setups, because I just threw an entire set of 3 for a specific program advance in there at a time. So I think my current folder has like 5 or 6 different program advances in it. It's just to show them off. There are a couple in here that are complete winners, but there's also ones that aren't as good as other ones in the fact of not only just there are better ones to use, but there's also literally better versions of that one to use in the case of like a Life Sword 1, 2, and 3. With that, let's now jump cut over to my first actual program advance and see what we got to do. Starting off from memory, I think we're gonna do Zeta Raton. This requires Raton 1, 2, and 3, so you can't do this for most of the game's campaign, but it is a pretty good one. I'd say it's even the best version of this program advance period because you turn invisible and can spam Ratons that each do 90 damage for a good period of time. They work like the Raton chips in the game themselves do. They go along the same plane as you until they hit a place that goes down, in which case they follow that wall downwards. They cannot travel upwards, but on bosses that are ground-based, it's not the worst. Next up, let's use arrows. By using twin, triple, and quad needle in a row, you get the arrow program advance, which is several arrows that do 100 damage in a row. Again, this is okay on some boss fights. It's better in the mainline games from memory because I think these arrows don't outright make the enemies flinch. They instead would stun them for a second and then get hit by the next one. Next up, let's use Life Sword 2, Fire, Aqua, and Elect Sword in that order. It is a Life Sword that does 300 damage as opposed to the 200 Life Sword 1 did or the 400 Life Sword 3 does. If you like swords, having all 3 Life Swords in your folder isn't inherently a bad idea. I just prefer the third one inherently. Now, I actually have 2 I can do with this particular setup of a custom screen, but I'm opting to do the bomb-based one first. By using Little Bomb, Cross Bomb, and Big Bomb, all in that order, you get the Ultra Bomb program advance, which is, get this, a very large explosive. It's not too bad for cloud clearance, but there's not a lot of cases by the time you get to the point where you're at Gravity Man stage where that would come in handy outside of cases like this exact area here in Den Area 1. Next up, early in Den 2, we're going to use Spreader, Bubble Spread, and Heat Spread all in a row to use the very sillily named Giga Death program advance. It's a spreader that does 300 damage. It's no elemental, but 300 damage is 300 damage is 300 damage, so that's pretty nice. Next up, still here in Den Area 2, we're going to use the program events themed around the pre-zero account Navis. By using Sonic Blade, Gravity Hold, and Star Arrow in a row, you get Meteors. This is essentially the same attack as the Starman Navichip, it's just the absurd version he does when he's low on health that is an absurd amount of meteors. Next up, I jack out and change my folder because now it's time for one of my favorites. By using Custom Sword, Variable Sword, and Proto Man in order, you get the Double Hero Program Advance, where Proto Man shows up and Mega Man and him just wreck complete shit around an area on that side of the screen that you're facing. Not too bad against boss fights. I do think there's better. Also, this is how Gravity Hold works, for some reason. Next up is the Big Heart Program Advance, which I'm actually pausing here to try and remember the exact order it goes in, because sometimes I can't remember if one chip goes first or the other. It requires Repair, Recover 300, and Roll in that order. This is essentially a super-powered roll Navichip. It does 200 damage and then heals you for... I'm not sure if it's your entire HP bar or like 800 HP. I'm going to assume it's your entire HP bar, but again, I don't use this a lot, so I don't know. And now, time for the final program advance. By using High Guard, Z-Saber, and Zero in a row, you get Zero Counter. This is the hardest program advance to use in the game because it's the only one that's an active counterattack. You have to wait to be attacked before you use it. But if you do, Zero shows up, does some slashes, then Mega Man finishes off with a charge shot for 300 damage per hit it actively lands on the enemy. So that can do upwards of 600 damage on boss fights given the length of invincibility frames in this game. And that's every program advance. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 15, now that we've done all the program advances, we're going to enter the final level and take care of that optional boss fight before heading off towards endgame. See you guys then.